Hey, Professor Homey here, and we're going to finish this off. Well, we're not going to finish it off. Obviously, there's other parts we're going to have to work on, but we're going to finish out the basic layout, and we're going to work on the footer section. The footer has basically, there's a footer element, and there's two IDs inside there. There's a navbottom ID, and it's a nav element with an ID of navbottom, and there's a paragraph with an ID of copyright. They don't just have to be these big section kind of things that have IDs. Anything can have an ID, so paragraph can have an ID. And so we have these two IDs that's inside of footer. So we're gonna format this, and one of the things we're gonna have to do, if you look at the last thing we're at, we took it out of the float. So we're gonna have to set this up so we get rid of the bullets. We're gonna put these in line. It's actually a list right now, but we're gonna basically put a little margin afterwards so they line it up. The bottom part, the copyright's the same as the top, so that'll be an easy one. Matter of fact, we'll do that first. Let's do that first. But here we have footer at the bottom. And I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to copy this and paste it twice because there's two footer things at the bottom. And let me paste it one more time. There's two footer things at the bottom. There's the footer, which we did first, and then there's footer nav bottom. Now this may sound confusing, but it's the nav bottom ID, the nav element that's inside of footer. Now you could really just do this. You don't have to indicate nav the first name. Since we're inside of footer, we could just do that. Or we could just do nav bottom. But however you do that, I'm going to take off the nav on that little first name part. We don't need that because it's just getting too much. So we have nav bottom inside of footer, and then the other one we also have is copyright is inside of there. So you could put the P here. You don't need it. You could put the nav here, but you don't need it. And again, the reason the space is because this is inside of footer. The ID of footer isn't nav bottom. I didn't even give footer an ID. It has no ID. That's why here's footer. There's no ID for footer. It's just footer. There's only one footer on the page. But there are separate IDs inside of footer. So you don't even need footer. If there's no other nav bottom, you could just have footer. But just to keep things organized, we're keeping the footer so we know that nav bottom is inside of footer. So anyway, we're going to focus on the copyright first, and here's what I'll do. I'll make this easy. I'll go up to where I have all this, that was address bar, I believe. I'm going to highlight all the stuff from address bar, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go down to where I have copyright, and I'm just going to paste it here, because all that stuff, the white color, the background color of brown, and the padding should be the way it's set up. And I think I'm also going to make, one thing I'll add to it is I'll give a font size, and I'll make it a little smaller. I'll make it like that, like a 0.9. M, like 90%. So I'll do that. I'll save that, and I'll come here, and you should see that footer at the bottom. So the footer's done. I mean, the copyright's done, is what I'm saying. So that was the easy part. It goes all the way across. That's the way it should look down here. That's actually finished. All right, so we're going to do this part. It's a little more tricky, but we already did some of it. Remember, the nav bottom has different parts of it. Remember there's LIs, there's ULs, so there's different parts of it. But what we're going to do first with just nav bottom is I'm just going to do a text align, and I'm going to center it. So that I'll center the whole, whether you like that look or not, that's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to center it, and that'll center nav bottom. And I'll save this, and I'll go back, and there it is. It's centered, except we want to get rid of the bullets. Okay, now if we want to get rid of the bullets, we're not going to do it to nav bottom. What we're going to do, I'll go back to my CSS. Now I have to add some more things here. But inside of nav bottom now, I'm going to highlight this. There's nav bottom UL. That's the unordered list. You can see how we have this path here, nav bottom UL. And you can see why at some point people might want to take away the footer part, but I'm leaving that in so you know that we're working inside the footer. So what are we going to do for the UL? Same thing we did up here. The list style none. I can just copy this. We don't want any bullets. No bullets. So we'll go down here to the UL, which is the list. I'll paste this, and that'll get rid of the bullets. Bullets are gone. Okay? What else do we want to do? We want to make it in line. Okay? And that we're going to do with the line items. So we don't have line items here. Now we got to copy this and put line items. And I'm going to specify the LI. And notice you could do this. You could do UL, but we only have one list, so we don't need to specify the ULs. It's just the line items inside a nav bottom. There's no other line items inside there. If there's only one list, then you don't have to keep spelling out that whole kind of path that it's going in. As long as it's the only thing you're dealing with, you don't always need that whole path there. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do two things. We're going to do display inline, because by default everything is typically as block elements, especially in a list. But we're going to use what's called inline. And what it'll do is it'll put them all on one line. And when it does that, it'll put them all together. So we're also going to do something. We're going to do a margin right. And this will kind of put a little space kind of to the right of them. And I'll just put like 6 pixels for now. That should be enough. You could always put more. Or you could put like 1M or something. And if it's too much, we'll reduce it. And let's see what happens. So now we align the whole section of navbottom, which is just with the links. We took the list and we took away the bullets, and then we made it inline, which should put it on one line, and we should have some space between these things. So let's see what this looks like. And that's kind of okay right now. That looks like it's okay. That's actually the way I want it to look, except we have a little spacing issue. It's kind of, we have a little space at the bottom there with this section. So we could fix that. We can actually put like a margin top on the copyright. We didn't do that, but let's put a little kind of spacing above that. I'll put that as the first element. Alright, now it's back. And now that margin top creates that little space there. And if you wanted to create a margin top above the nav part, that nav bottom, you could also do that. You could say footer nav bottom. And if you wanted to create a little more space, now you see we have a little more space at the bottom. So this is our nav bottom. This is this section here. So here's that copyright section down here. And now this is actually laid out the way I want it to be. As far as our layout, we're pretty good. We just have to put on the border and the drop shadow. And you know what? You could copy that from your other document. You could open up EX4. Okay, I'm going to go up in the body section, and I'm just going to paste this from my other thing. And this is where we did the box shadow, the border, and all that. I just took it from my other document. Why retype all this stuff? I'll save it, and then I'll come over here, and there it is. There's my box shadow, like we did on the other one, and there should be a little border on there. I'll refresh it here. There's the border going around. So everything's done for the layout. We just have to focus on the links.